I mean,
Oh,
got too many things to keep up with. Okay, there we are. We're live on the live stream, it looks like. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul. Let me start the recordings here. Record to this computer. And over here, record to the cloud. Okay, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul. And tonight we had an exciting meeting for y'all tonight. We're going to talk about Jesus spending the night in jail with Jude. And it's not in the New Testament. You can go out there and look and you cannot find it. It's just not out there. So you're going to learn about it tonight. And you're going to learn a little bit about Jesus and what happened with his family afterwards. So let's get into this. It's really good paper. Let me change the screen here so everybody can see. All right, you got it, dear?
yes.
Okay, would you take that first paragraph?
The 25th year, AD 19. This year began with the Nazareth family all in good health and witnessed the finishing of the regular schooling of all the children with the exception of certain work which Martha must do for Ruth.
Man, you remember that the agreement for Martha to get married, she had to prepare Ruth in the family, right? So that's what they're talking about. So she had 2 years to help prepare Ruth for taking over the responsibilities of Martha. And there's Jane. Jane, I got your message. Good to see you.
Good.
Yeah. You doing all right?
Doing okay. I can talk to you after the class.
Okay, that would be fine. We
That'll
were
be
all
very nice.
concerned about you. So that's why I called. But anyway, we'll talk after the class. Okay. I wonder if I can set this so this does not show up. No, I guess not. Okay, here we go. So Martha had to prepare Ruth for being part of doing her job in the family so she could get married. That's what all this was about. So it works good too. I'm getting a closed caption tonight. I don't think I got last time. Okay, here we go. I'm learning all these new things, everyone on this podcast, trying to record it, be at 8 places at once. So y'all will have to bear with me a little bit. Let's see if it's on that one too. Okay, we're good to go. We're good to go all the way around. All right, let's see here. Who's next? Rodney, I believe you're next.
Okay. Jesus was one of the most robust and refined specimens of manhood to appear on earth since the days of Adam. His physical development was superb. His mind was active, keen, and penetrating compared with the average mentality of his contemporaries. It had developed gigantic proportions, and his spirit was indeed humanly divine.
Now, can y'all imagine Jesus standing next to our piddly little minds? Right?
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone downhill since then a bit, haven't we?
And thinking about this, because I've read it before, with a physical being having a divine personality within it, you would think it would help the physical nature.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have less, how do I say this? You'd have less chance of having deformities and disease and things like that. And your body would probably be more of a self-healing organism, more like Adam and Eve was. The only difference is that Adam and Eve had the tree of life when they first got here. Mm-hmm. So their cellular metabolism would replace itself and repair itself on its own. Now, after they defaulted and they could no longer access the tree of life, which helped them stay alive, then of course their bodies would start to degenerate like ours does. Okay.
Well,
Not as quickly though.
worrying is very destructive for the body.
What do you mean?
Jesus had no worry.
No, he didn't. Well, I would not say that, Rodney, because he did have worry because he had to, I'm sure he worried about his family and what was going to happen to him and all those things that happen in a normal life, because that was part of his bestowal experience, was to experience all the emotions and all the things that happen with human beings. So
It's true.
you know, all the things that he experienced were pretty much on the same line as we do, with the exception of the fact that him being divine, the way he handled the situation would be totally different, right?
Yep.
That's all. There goes that right again. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna tie my tongue every time I say right. You know. So.
Well, speaking of trouble, it just appeared.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we have Jane on board with us.
Yeah, Jane.
Hmm?
Jane, you missed this before, but I was talking about, you know, when we were editing the meetings, the 26 meetings, I didn't realize y'all were suffering so much. I got into one meeting yesterday that I edited getting ready for the book. The reason I didn't put a chapter out today is I had 17 rights in the meeting.
Oh, but that's okay, Roger. The reason it's okay is because we all have our own habitual expressions.
Yes.
So people listening to you that know you,
Yeah.
that doesn't register. You
Yeah,
know,
I
it
hope
just
not.
goes.
It was bad, bad. I'm there editing all this. I'm going, oh my gosh, what's
That's
wrong?
all right. I say okay, and I say it's all right.
Yeah, all right. Okay, let's move on. Pam, would you take the next one, please?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me change the video first.
Yeah.
Here. Okay.
The family finances were in the best condition since the disappearance of Joseph's estate. The final payments had been made on the caravan repair shop. They owed no man, and for the first time in years had some funds ahead. This being true, and since he had taken his other brothers to Jerusalem for their first Passover ceremonies, Jesus decided to accompany Jude, who had just graduated from the synagogue school, on his first visit to the temple.
Okay, so since he took his other brothers to the temple, so for their consecration as men, he decided he better take Jude also, and this is part of the problem that comes up with how he ended up in jail with it. All right. But at this point in their life, they were sitting pretty good because their finances was better. Okay, so he experienced the same things we did with the finance type thing. Jane, would you take the next one?
They went up to Jerusalem and returned by the same route to Jordan Valley, as Jesus feared trouble if he took his young brother through Samaria. Already at Nazareth, Jude had got into slight trouble several times because of his hasty disposition, coupled with his strong patriotic sentiments.
So he had a little bit of a temper, didn't he? And since he was a patriot, anything that was against the Jewish faith or against the Jewish people, he'd take issue with. And that's what started all this. Gary, you get the real short one. And don't let your dog read it this time.
You're muted. There you
I
go.
wish I had a smarter dog. That's all I gotta say. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
They arrived at Jerusalem in due time and were on their way to the first visit to the temple. the very sight of such of which had stirred and thrilled Jude to the very depth of his soul. When they chanced to meet Lazarus of Bethany, while Jesus talked with Lazarus and sought to arrange for their joint celebration of the Passover, Jude started up real trouble for them all. Close at hand stood a Roman guard who made some improper remarks regarding a Jewish girl who was passing. Jude, flushed with fury, indignation, fury.
Fiery.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Indigestion.
No, indignant.
Trust
You
me,
probably had that too.
I'm getting new glasses right after this.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, it was
Indignation.
not slow in expressing his resentment of such an improperly directly to God, I'm doing terrible. To and within hearing of the soldier. Now the Roman legionnaires were very sensitive to anything bordering on Jewish disrespect. So the guard promptly placed Jude under arrest. This was too much for the young patriot, and before Jesus could caution him by a warning glance, he had delivered himself to a voluble,
Voluble. In other words, very loud, the enunciation.
thank you, of pent-up anti-Roman feelings, all of which only made a matter worse. Jude, with Jesus by his side, was taken at once to the military prison.
Okay.
Hmm.
So picture this. Jesus is there with his brother, okay, Jude. And he's talking to Lazarus about going to the Passover at his house, you know. And while he was busy talking to Lazarus, Jude was right next to him, but he hears this Roman soldier make a disparaging remark about a Jewish girl. And so he blew up, basically, you know. And because he blew up at this Roman soldier, this soldier immediately put him under arrest, okay, because they don't put up with that. And even though it was a Jewish holiday, the Roman soldiers were very sensitive of what was going on around them, and they wanted to crush anything that even sensed of rebellion. Okay, so when they did this, it happened so fast, Jesus did not have a chance to glance over at Jude and reprimand him, you know, say, hey, you can't do this, you know. And it was too late. And then the Romans took him to the prison, the military prison, took him under arrest. So since he took Jesus, being the father brother that he was, he said, I can't let him go alone. So he went with him to the jail. You know, that's a good father, right? That would go to you to the jail. And this is a picture of the legions of Roman soldiers. And you'll notice here what it says is about 5,000 men divided into two cohorts. 10 cohorts makes a general assembly of a legion, okay? And every 480 men are divided into 6 centurions, which makes each centurion over 80 men. Okay, that's the way the Romans worked back then. Okay, all right, so let's go on to the next one. Let's see who's up next. Diane. Let me read the next one so that it kind of spreads it out a little bit. Jesus endeavored to obtain either an immediate hearing for Jude or else his release in time for the Passover celebration that evening. But he failed in these attempts. Since the next day was a holy convocation in Jerusalem, even the Romans would not presume to hear charges against the Jew because of the Jewish holiday. Accordingly, Jude remained in confinement until the morning of the second day after his arrest, and Jesus stayed at the prison with him. They were not present in the temple at the ceremony of receiving the sons of the law into full citizenship of Israel. Jude did not pass through this formal ceremony for several years until he was next in Jerusalem at a Passover and in connection with his propaganda work in behalf of the Zealots, the patriotic organization which he belonged, in which he was very active. Okay, so Jesus spent the 2 days in jail right there along with Jude. Okay, so that's how Jesus ended up in jail. And this is not in the New Testament anywhere. It's not told, the story's not told anywhere. So this is only in the Urantia book. I wanted to make that
Also,
clear.
according to the Bible, there were no brothers or sisters.
And according to the Bible, there were no brothers and sisters, and we know he had several.
You know,
This is
There's something else you got to think about. Jude was not a full-grown man.
No, he was.
I mean, so
He
he's
wasn't.
gone to prison with men.
Yes.
You know, that is not a good situation.
No,
Yeah,
it's
he would
not.
have been 13.
He would have been 13. And Jude, Jesus, being a full-grown man of, what, 24 here?
He was going to have to protect him.
He was going to have to protect him from the other men. That's right. And this is a picture of Jerusalem. And you can look at this at your leisure. You can look at it either on the Atlanta Urantia Study Group or Fifth Epical
Is that
Revelation
the
Fellowship.
jail that's blue?
That's, I believe the jail is blue there, the prison. So you can look that, you can make this picture as big as you want because it's a PNG file, I believe. So, okay, here we go. Diane, would you take the next?
The morning following their second day in prison, Jesus appeared before the military magistrate in behalf of Jude. By making apologies for his brother's youth and by a further explanatory but judicious statement with reference to the provocative nature of the episode which had led up to the arrest of his brother, Jesus so handled the case that the magistrate expressed the opinion that the young Jew might have had some possible excuse for his violent outburst. After warning Jude not to allow himself again to be guilty of such rashness, he said to Jesus in dismissing them, "You had better keep your eye on the lad. He's liable to make a lot of trouble for all of us, for all of you." And the Roman judge spoke the truth. Jude did make considerable trouble for Jesus, and always was the trouble of the same nature. Clashes with the civil authorities because of his thoughtless and unwise patriotic outburst.
Roger, you're on mute.
Thank you. It's interesting that because this Roman judge thought Jesus, presented himself so well that he kind of let this all go and allowed him to go on with Jesus. This is interesting because we'll find out later on in the book when Jesus goes to Rome and stands before Caesar. Jesus is so impressive as a person, as he communicated with people and stuff. Caesar looked over at his aide and said, "Boy, if I had the ways of that man, then I really would be an emperor, huh?"
Yeah.
So he must have presented himself in an amazing manner, just being himself. All right. Rodney, would you take the next?
Yes. Jesus and Jude walked over to Bethany for the night, explaining why they had failed to keep their appointment for the Passover supper, and set out for Nazareth the following day. Jesus did not tell the family about his young brother's arrest at Jerusalem, but he had a long talk with Jude about this episode some 3 weeks after their return. After this talk with Jesus, Jude himself told the family he never forgot the patience and forbearance his brother father manifested throughout the whole of this trying experience.
So he didn't even relay this back to the family. He let Jude tell everyone after about 3 weeks after this happened.
And that was cool.
Yeah, that's
And it's a
pretty
cooling
cool.
off period too.
It was. And an interesting part of this too is later on in this paper tonight, we're going to find out that he actually helped Jude get a job as a fisher, helping as a fisherman. And he liked fishing so much, that's what he took up as his vocation in life after he got married. And it's interesting, it's a perfect vocation for somebody like Jude, because when he's out on the water fishing with one or two people, he's not going to get in trouble talking to Romans and things like that.
Exactly.
All right. Let's go on. Let's see. Pam, would you take the next one, please?
This was the last Passover Jesus attended with any member of his own family. Increasingly, the Son of Man was to become separated from close association with his own flesh and blood.
So you can see he's slowly removing himself from the family a little bit at a time so that when he goes, it won't be that big a deal. All right. You have your hand up there? Let's cat stay. Okay. Jane, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. This year, his seasons of deep meditation were often broken into by Ruth and her playmate. And always was Jesus ready to postpone the contemplation of his future work for the world and the universe, that he might share in the childish joy and joyful gladness of these youngsters, who never tired of listening to Jesus relate the experience of his various trips to Jerusalem. They also greatly enjoyed his stories about animals and nature.
You can imagine seeing Jesus with these young kids crawling up on his lap and him telling them stories about different things, can't you? See how the children really loved him. Gary, I don't know how you do it every time.
Yes, the good ones.
But you get the long ones every time. Okay.
You stage this.
No, I really don't.
And I'm serious. I'm getting glasses right after this.
Yeah.
I am serious as crud. And I've got an eye infection on top of it. Anyway, here we go. The children were always welcome at the repair shop. Jesus provided sand, blocks, and stones by the side of the shop. And bevies and what's wrong with me? And bevies of youngsters flocked there to amuse themselves. When they tired of their play, the more intrepid ones would peek into the shop, and if its keepers were not busy, they would make bold to go in and say, "Uncle Joshua, come out and tell us a big story." Now they'd think you're fibbing, but anyway, then they would lead him out by tugging at his hands until he was seated on the favorite rock by the corner of the shop, with the children on the ground in a semicircle before him. And how the little folks did enjoy their Uncle Joshua. They were learning to laugh and to laugh heartily. It was customary for one or two of the smallest of the children to climb upon his knees and sit there looking up in wonderment at his expressive features as he told his stories. The children loved Jesus, and Jesus loved the children.
It's like he was a magnet.
He was
a love magnet.
He was, and you can imagine, you can see him doing this very thing, right?
I don't think I've ever met anybody like that.
Yeah. All right, Diane, your time.
It was difficult for his friends to comprehend the range of his intellectual activities, how he could so suddenly and so completely swing from the profound discussion of politics, philosophy, or religion to the lighthearted and joyous playfulness of these tots from 5 to 10 years of age. As his own brothers and sisters grew up, as he gained more leisure, and before the grandchildren arrived, he paid a great deal of attention to these little ones. But he did not live on earth long enough to enjoy the grandchildren very much.
So he had been crucified before most of the grandchildren came along, so he didn't get that opportunity. But he did enjoy these children around the place here. All right, number 7, the 26th year, AD 20. As this year began, Jesus of Nazareth became strongly conscious that he possessed a wide range of potential power, but he was likewise fully persuaded that this power was not to be employed by his personality as the Son of Man, not at least not until his hour should come. So he began to see some of the power he had, but he wouldn't use it in his human form.
And it makes you wonder, obviously they didn't put every single thing into the book.
Yes.
And perhaps he accidentally did something and moved a cup or something.
A lot of different things could happen, right? It's kind of funny you say that, Rodney, because human beings are possessed of certain powers that very few of us use, right? Especially like being able to sense things, and those people can project their personalities out and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of powers that human beings don't use because, number one, it's not a good thing for other people to see you do it. It scares them, but there's a lot of things like people moving objects with their minds and that sort of thing that probably happens quite often, but people are afraid to say anything about it because they don't want to be, put out as somebody that was, unusual and that sort of thing, right? So,
well, you all have heard of auras, I'm quite sure. I actually auras.
Auras, yeah.
I actually knew a person that could see them.
Yeah.
And it was an everyday thing with her. It was natural.
Yeah. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. At this time, he thought much, but said little about the relation of himself to his Father in heaven. And the conclusion of all this thinking was expressed once in his prayer on the hilltop, when he said, regardless of who I am and what power I may or may not wield, I always have been and always will be subject to the will of my paradise Father. And yet, as this man walked about Nazareth to and from his work, it was literally true as concerned a vast universe, that in him were hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge.
So, being Michael, he had all the answers of everything, didn't he? But this attitude he had is the problem that Lucifer did not have, wasn't it?
That's right.
Because he was not willing to do what the Father always wanted him to do in his life. We have a real advantage. Y'all don't realize, because of us fusing with the thought adjuster in the mansion worlds, that when we fuse with that adjuster, that will of God fuses with our will, right? So from that point on, we don't have to worry about doing the will of God the Father, because God the Father's will become part of our will, right? And I know I harp on it all the time about doing the will of God in our lives, but this is our pre-training to being able to do that into the future, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Pam, take the next one.
All this year, the family affairs ran smoothly except for Jude. For years, James had trouble with his youngest brother, who was not inclined to settle down to work, nor was he to be depended upon for his share of the home expenses. While he would live at home, he was not conscientious about earning his share of the family upkeep.
Hmm.
All right, so Jude was kind of a wild one, wasn't he? He didn't really want to do everything he was supposed to do. It took him a while to grow up, but eventually he does grow up. All right, Jane, would you take the next one?
Okay. Jesus was a man. I was reflecting on that. There was so much there. Jesus
Yes.
was a man of peace, and ever and anon was he embarrassed by Jude's belligerent exploits and numerous patriotic outbursts. James and Joseph were in favor of casting him out, but Jesus would not consent. When their patience would be severely tried, Jesus would only counsel, be patient, be wise in your counsel, and eloquent in your lives, that your young brother may first know the better way, and then be constrained to follow you in it. The wise and loving counsel of Jesus prevented a break in the family. They remained together, but Jude never was brought to his sober senses until after his marriage.
You
Marriage.
cannot replace experience, can you?
And you know what? Jude in the Catholic Church is known to pray to him when you want to pray for the impossible. And now I see probably for very unruly teenagers or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
One could ask, if those who believe in intercessory prayers, wow, the guy went the roundabout way.
He did. And and it's very common for us as people, especially in our family, not to be patient with our brothers and sisters and that sort of thing, because it takes so long to grow up, doesn't it? I mean, it takes years and years. Many people don't grow up even until their 60s and 70s, right? They're still children. So, what Jesus is trying to teach them is all you can really do, you can't make decisions for someone else. You can show them the way in your own life. That's the best thing you can do. And hopefully they will be wise enough to see what you have done in your life, and from that action, do things in their life along the same way so they can obtain wisdom over time too. But it's hard to do that. The tendency is we just want to throw them out of the house, get rid of them, and that be done. So Jesus just has a better way of doing things, and that's, I think, what we need to learn from this. See, Gary, you got a shorter one this time.
Yeah, it's 4 words. Mary seldom spoke of Jesus' future mission. Whenever this subject was referred to, Jesus only replied, "My hour has not yet come." Jesus had about completed the difficult task of weaning his family from dependence on the immediate presence of his personality. He was rapidly preparing for the day when he could consistently leave his Nazareth home to begin the more active prelude to his real ministry for men.
So he was literally training his family so he could leave, wasn't he?
You got to think about this once. Jesus, I don't believe from what we just previously read, fully aware or fully convinced that he was the Son of Man.
Yes.
I think he was like 80, 90%, but he had some doubts. But still, he went about his business preparing for something that was very ambiguous in his future.
Mm-hmm. And we do the same thing, don't we? I mean, you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
In our lives, we prepare for a future that we've learned about because of the Urantia book. We're far fortunate because of that. But it's just like Jesus, it's very ambiguous what's going to happen in the future. Just like I can say this in my own life, I never dreamed that I would get to the point where I'd start writing a book about presenting classes on the Urantia book. But you never know what's going to work out in your life. Things just fall in certain places in your own life, and you do things as a result of things being put in front of you. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. It happened to me again today, but that's another story.
Yeah. But then you can see what he's saying here. You know, his hour had not yet come, so he kept going on about his daily life, preparing for that day when it would come. Right? All right, Diane, you're back up again here.
Okay. Never lose sight of the fact that the prime mission of Jesus in his seventh bestowal was the acquirement of creature experience, the achievement of the sovereignty of Nebadon. And in the gathering of this very experience, he made the supreme revelation of the Paradise Father to Urantia and to his entire local universe. Incidental to these purposes, he also undertook to untangle the complicated affairs of this planet as they were related to the Lucifer rebellion.
I tell you what, that Lucifer sure made a mess of things, didn't it?
Yeah.
For our lives.
Complicated everything.
And so he had to prepare the planet for that and also reveal God the Father in the process, right?
You know, we got messed up with Lucifer, then we got messed up with Adam and Eve.
And Caligasta. You got to remember Caligasta. He's the one that really started it on this planet, right?
Okay. So maybe we get second choices?
No. Our choices, you know, we have to realize that the trials and tribulations of this life are our training grounds for learning wisdom, if you think about it, and learning Marancha Moda. That's what all these struggles are about. We think that we're here to live an easy life and all this. We're not. We're here to struggle. If we didn't have the struggle, we wouldn't learn the lessons. That's the way it works. All right. And that's a hard lesson to learn.
So if you're a fast learner, you're going to have a lot of trouble.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Any way you look at it, it's true. This year, Jesus enjoyed more than usual leisure. He devoted much time to training James in the management of the repair shop and Joseph in the direction of home affairs. Mary sensed that he was making ready to leave them. Leave them to go where? To do what? She had about given up on the thought that Jesus was the Messiah. She could not understand him. She simply could not fathom her firstborn son. Now, talk about Mary, Jesus's mother, not his sister, right?
Mhm.
All right.
You got to remember, Mary was convinced from day one
Yeah,
that he was the Messiah.
right. She was. All right.
That poor woman had a lot of problems with the
She did.
family.
Yeah, she
When you
did.
think of Jude and then Jesus, she had a lot she had a lot to worry about.
You know, Jane, too, because the Catholic Church really idolized Mary. You know,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, they really did, and she had a difficult life, just like every other woman
Yeah.
does that has children, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's just all there is to it. We all experience the same issues and problems.
Yeah, and some mothers do suffer more than others. I know mothers who suffered greatly, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, some suffer more through their kids.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny. We think that if you suffer at something bad, it's really a blessing when it comes down to it, you know, because you learn the lessons from the suffering.
You know,
Mhm.
I'm just reflecting on some things that in my life, and I know of mothers, and I'm not being specific, but that suffered very little, had not a
Mm-hmm.
bad life. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not talking wealth and all that stuff, but just and but when you talk to them, you would think they suffered greatly
Yeah.
and sacrificed greatly, and in reality, to somebody who has experienced much more, you say, man, you had it easy. You're saying it to yourself.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that is just due to the fact that the person I'm referring to never basically learned from the mistakes. Is that the suffering?
Yeah.
And I was wondering, that could very well be the control mechanism as to how much knowledge you get the opportunity to learn.
Well, remember too that your guardian angels are in charge of putting these problems in front of you. So if you don't learn your lessons from the initial suffering, guess what happens? You get to go through more. That's right.
And
So
Yeah.
learn your lessons the first time.
Mm.
I told a friend of mine once, I says, what we just discussed about the lessons. And I says, if you don't learn the first time, the second time is going to get worse. Third time is going to be worse. And on until basically either learn the lesson or you're going to die from it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
in my life, I can point to examples of that,
Hmm. Rodney, would you take the next one, please, sir?
Yes. Jesus spent a great deal of time this year with the individual members of his family. He would take them for long and frequent strolls up the hill and through the countryside. Before harvest, he took Jude to the farmer uncle south of Nazareth. But Jude did not remain long after the harvest. He ran away.
Mhm.
Simon later found him with a fisherman at the lake. When Simon brought him back home, Jesus talked things over with the runaway lad. And since he wanted to be a fisherman, went over to Magdala with him and put him in the care of a relative, a fisherman. And Jude worked fairly well and regularly from that time on until his marriage. And he continued as a fisherman after his marriage.
So Jesus figured out the perfect occupation for him, didn't he? Because
Yeah.
he wouldn't settle down. Pam, you got in short paragraphs all night long. You got another one?
At last, the day had come when all Jesus' brothers had chosen and were established in their life work. The stage was being set for Jesus' departure from home.
Okay, so he has everybody arranged, doesn't he? All right. So, Jane, would you take the next?
In November, a double wedding occurred. James and Esther and Miriam and Jacob were married. It was truly a joyous occasion. Even Mary was once more happy, except every now and then when she realized that Jesus was preparing to go away. She suffered under the burden of a great uncertainty. If Jesus would only sit down and talk it all over freely with her, as he had done when he was a boy. But he was consistently uncommunicative. He was profoundly silent about the future.
And what do y'all think that is?
Well, the truth was hard to bear.
Yep.
It was. And he had grown into a man. So his days of getting counsel from his mother and his family were over, weren't they?
Mhm.
So it was time for him to make his own counsel and just move on, right?
And do it.
We're just saving them for you, Gary. That's
I
all
know.
there is to it.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Ready? James and his bride, Esther, moved into a neat little home on the west side of town, the gift of her father. While James continued his support of his mother's home, his quota was cut in half because of his marriage, and Joseph was formally installed by Jesus as head of the family. Jude was now very faithfully spending his share of funds home each month. The wedding of James and
Miriam.
Miriam,
Mhm.
had a very beneficial influence on Jude. And when he left for the fishing grounds, The day after the double wedding, he assured Joseph that that he could depend on him to do my full duty and more if it is needed. And he kept his promise.
So he grew up pretty quick then, didn't he?
Yeah.
All right. So he sent his share in. Oops. It's the wrong way. He sent his share in each month.
Miriam lived next door to Mary in the home of Jacob, Jacob the elder having been laid to rest with his fathers. Martha took Miriam's place in the home, and the new organization was working smoothly before the year ended.
How many were actually left at this point?
Ruth? Roger, you're muted.
Sorry, just the baby Ruth was the only child left at home with Martha at this time, right? I mean with Mary at this time. Can't keep my ends right. All right. The day after the double wedding, Jesus held an important conference with James. He told James confidently that he was preparing to leave home. He presented full title to the repair shop to James, formally and solemnly abdicating as head of Joseph's house, and most touchingly established his brother James as head and protector of my father's house. He drew up and they both signed a secret compact in which it was stipulated that in return for the gift of the repair shop, James would henceforth assume full financial responsibility for the family, thus releasing Jesus from all further obligation in these matters. After the contract was signed, after the budget was so arranged that the actual expenses of the family would be met without any contribution from Jesus, Jesus said to James, let me switch screens here so I can read this. But my son, I will continue to send you something each month until my hour shall have come. But what I send shall be used by you as the occasion demands. Apply my funds to the family necessities or pleasures as you see fit. Use them in case of sickness or apply them to meet the unexpected emergencies which may befall any individual member of the family. So he turned everything over to James at this point. We got one more paragraph, y'all.
To everybody.
Yeah. Rodney, would you take the last one, please?
Okay. And thus did Jesus make ready to enter upon the second and home detached phase of his adult life before the public entrance upon his Father's business.
Okay, and that was that. All right, let's do the prayer of acceptance here, and we'll close out for tonight. Reshare everything. Here we go. There it is. All right. Jane, would you like to read the prayer of acceptance? You haven't been with us for a while, so.
Yes. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By the same faith, I became a child of God, and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Nebadon, as Christ Michael Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I would someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen. And thanks everyone for coming to see us tonight. Next time we will be starting a new paragraph, new paper, paper 129, The Later Adult Life of Jesus. And that will be on Thursday. The sun still shines and I still get up. Okay, so we will see everybody at that time. Don't everybody run off. Let's stay around and talk for a minute. Let me stop the recordings.